Morning, Bill. Good to see you. And truly, it's an honor to be here today with you all. It's an honor to come back to Greenville. I was just this morning going on a walk, and it's good to breathe in the air and to have fresh, clean air here as close to the city. So it's good to see you. Have you ever wondered what you would do if you met someone famous? Like if you were out in public and you see somebody famous, what's your reaction going to be? I'm sure you might have met somebody before and you freaked out and you're the person who's like running, screaming, or whatever it is. I have met a couple famous people in my life. The first one I'm going to show you, it's Don Cheadle. If you know who Don Cheadle is, he was in the Avengers, Iron Man, Oceans 11 and 12. Dude, another story for another day. Dude showed up in my front porch and says, "Hey, I'm Don." I'm like, "Yeah, no kidding." And so met Don Cheadle. But this happened recently, and this one I was really excited about, and probably more giddy than I was. Don Cheadle. I work and live in inner city Cincinnati, where we live amongst people oftentimes that are a little bit low on hope. And so one of the things I've got the pleasure to do in the past years, we started this thing called the Block Teaching Kitchen. And it's for kids who have dropped out of school or people who have maybe graduated and have no direction in life. And we brought in a chef, and the chef trains and teaches these students and kids over a 12-week period. And when you graduate, you should have like the Serve Safe certifications and other certifications that you would have to go out into the real world and get a job. And the cool part about it is Kroger, because it's a Cincinnati-based company, has come behind it financially, but also will hire the people who graduate from our program. So not only do you get skills, but you also get a job. It's been this really cool thing that I've gotten to be a part of. And because of that, Kroger, they built this brand new state-of-the-art store in downtown Cincinnati, and it's like nothing else. And they invited us to come as their community partner and talk about them before they open their brand new store. Really cool. And so I get to go downtown and be a part of this. And I'm thinking, I know I'm going to meet some Kroger executives, get it. I know I'm probably, there's probably going to be a couple news stations, whatever. So I get down there, and there's like a legitimate parade. Like 5,000 people, University of Cincinnati's marching bands like going up and down the streets. And I'm like, oh gosh, this is a way bigger deal than I thought. There's like booths and carnivals and all this stuff there. And so I'm looking for my connection lady who brought me there. I'm looking for her, and she's running the event. And finally I find her in the big mass of people, and she's like, "I need you to stand right here before all this, and we're going to bring you on stage. Okay, so stand right here." So I stand right here with this kind of roped off group of people. And to my right is the mayor of Cincinnati, John Cranley. It's pretty cool. I don't want to downplay John Cranley. There was some other like state, politicians, some kind of big names, the people that I kind of I know about them, but they're there. That was pretty cool. The owners of Cincinnati Reds, the Castellini family, is directly behind me. I'm like, that's pretty cool. There's some other people that just look like they own things behind them. And then to my right behind me, there's a person from The Voice. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I don't really watch the show, but that's really cool. Someone said that, and that person sang the national anthem. Sweet, that was awesome. But there was someone to my left, and this may not be a big deal to you, but it was a big deal to me. And I was pretty giddy about it. But there's this guy named Marty Brenneman. Now, you guys may not have ever heard of Marty Brenneman, but I know all about Marty Brenneman. And for the past 47 years has been the voice of the Cincinnati Reds. So you think back to Big Red Machine, all of those. He has been the guy, 162 games out of the year, the voice for Cincinnati sports. And really, in general, he's a Cincinnati living legend. Big deal. And there was a time in my life where I wanted to be a broadcaster. So, Marty is the guy. And not only that, what makes this even more cool, this was Marty's final year. And as a matter of fact, this was the day of Marty's final game. And here I am, literally rubbing shoulders with Marty Brenneman. I'm pretty stoked about it. And the first thing I think, I'm like, man, he's kind of short. But Marty's emceeing the event, and I'm thinking, you run through your mind. I've made a commitment to myself. I'm not going to freak out if I meet anybody famous. But Marty's kind of a big deal. So I'm like, well, I'm playing it cool, hey, Marty, nice to see you. Yeah, thanks for everything, and then, do that. But inside, I'm like, I can't believe I'm meeting Marty Brenneman. And so the whole event goes by, and we get called up on stage. We go through all that, and then afterwards, I'm like, I really don't want to ever take pictures with people, but I really want to take a picture of Marty Bremen, and I decided I'm not going to do it. And so Marty goes off and I go off, and as I reflect back on that day, and there's politicians and business owners and all these people, someone from The Voice, and Marty flipping Brenneman next to me, and me. Someone doesn't belong in this corner of the event, but I happened to get there. Genuinely, I felt like I was standing amongst giants. And the cool thing is, in this series, The Heroes of the Faith, you're standing amongst giants. You get to tell the stories of the people of faith that have done these incredible things. And it's inspiring, and it's cool, and it helps you maybe to see parts of God. But here's the thing that at least for me, and I would assume you can join in on this, it's kind of overwhelming. Because if we're being honest, one is, this is just like black letters on a white page. I don't know if you've ever felt that way, but it's just these stories about people in a different culture, and they're doing these things, and I feel like they're there, and I'm really down here, and they've done these things. I have never parted the Red Sea, let alone my own bathtub. I've never raised somebody from the dead. I've never done some miraculous miracle. I don't know. And that's how I feel. It's like I'm overwhelmed a little bit. And to some degree, it feels like it's unattainable. It's this important thing. And I know these are people that are really important people in Scripture. And God used them. But it feels unattainable, at least for me. And that's where and not only just for people in Scripture, but I don't know if you ever felt like even people in real life. It's like, man, this person's just so spiritual. This person's so nice. This person's they just feel like they're here and I am here, and I don't even know what to do with that, because I don't even feel like I can get there. They don't look like they want to kill their kids, and I want to kill my kids all the time. And, I don't know if you've ever felt that way, but I have felt that way, and I may be alone in that, but I don't think that I'm alone in that.
Amen.
Thank you. I feel like oftentimes it's a little overwhelming, and I feel like, what do I do? And that's where we jump into the story of Elijah. Elijah is found in 1 Kings. 1 and 2 Kings, just so you guys know this, 1 and 2 Kings was originally one book. It wasn't separated. It wasn't until later when they separated it. 1 Kings is just the continuation of the story and the story of Joshua. The book of Joshua is written, and it's a historical book. Some books of the Bible are different. They're poetic. 1 Kings is a historical book. And so it's chronologically going through the kings of Israel, and it's running through, this was a good king, and they did this, and this was a bad king. And the unfortunate part is Israel has a string of really bad kings. And these kings have turned to other gods. They've done things that are not good for the nation. And this kingdom is spiraling downwards. And so God sends this man named Elijah, who's a prophet. And that word's kind of overwhelming. Prophet is simply this: someone who speaks God's words on God's behalf. That's all it is. A prophet is someone who speaks God's words on God's behalf. And there have been numerous prophets, and even the New Testament talks about someone who has the gift of prophecy. So there may be people in this room. You know how to just speak God's words on God's behalf. But Elijah is called to speak God's words on God's behalf. And so God sends him, and the story picks up in 1 Kings 17 is original, where Elijah comes into the scene, and he says something to King Ahab, not a good king, and he says, just so you know, just to get your attention, Israel is not going to have rain for the next 3 years. There's going to be a drought for the next few years, just so you know that. And then Elijah kind of disappears out of the background. And guess what? Israel doesn't get rain. Historically speaking, Israel doesn't get rain for the next 3 years. And there's a lot of things that come with that. It is not good for a country. It's not good for a nation. Elijah's doing some cool things on the side, and the Bible talks about that. But then he comes back. And he meets Ahab again a few years later. And Ahab even says, "You troublemaker of Israel." You are bad news. Typically, prophets, they're not good news when they show up to some people. It's usually a lonely gig. It's usually a lonely job, and because you're saying something that goes against the culture. And when you say something that goes against the culture, usually it's alienating, and that's how Elijah feels, and he says that even later. But Ahab says, "You troublemaker of Israel," and Elijah says, "Listen here. I want you to go get your 450 prophets of Baal. Now, Baalism was a religion, and we could talk a lot about Baalism. We're not going to today, but Baalism was a god that ran rampant in ancient culture. And Baalism, the god Baal, was known to be the god of plentiful harvest and rain. And so when Elijah shows up and he says, hey, you're not going to have rain for 3 years, what do you think God is trying to communicate? I am greater than Baal. Deuteronomy, all these books, there's all these things of what God is doing. Oftentimes it's an attack on other gods to say, you are not better, you are not greater than me, you are not bigger than me, I can do far more than you. And he usually sends a prophet to go and say those words. So he says, bring your 450 prophets of Baal here, and your 400 prophets of Asherah, another god. And then we're going to show up. You bring 2 bulls. You can choose which bull that you want. You're going to bring your wood. We're going to cut the bull into pieces. We're going to throw the bull on there, and we're going to have a sacrifice. But don't light it on fire. And we're going to pray to our God. And whoever God shows up, that's who we know is the one true God. And so then they go in morning time, and the Baal prophets go first, and they're shouting, and it says this is kind of funny, is that they danced and hobbled around the altar. I don't know what hobbled is, but it's probably something like a wobble. If you've ever been to a wedding, you go, wobble baby, yeah. But they're dancing around the altar, and nothing's happening. And Elijah's got a little cockiness to him. He begins to taunt them, and maybe you've seen this before. He begins to taunt them. I think it's actually kind of funny. He says, shout louder. Maybe he is away on a trip. Perhaps he's daydreaming or relieving himself. Maybe he's asleep. Go and wake him up. He's taunting them over in the corner like, come on, Baal, what are you doing? And so they begin to go to greater extremes in something that would have been a normal custom for Baal prophets. They begin to shout louder, but also begin to cut themselves. And they are gushing blood. It would have been a pretty crazy scene, honestly. This is a real thing that happened. Baal has been chronicled over his history too, just so you know that. And so they have cut themselves. They're bleeding out, and they're screaming louder. And this goes all the way into the evening. They started in the morning, goes all the way into the evening, and then Elijah says, I've had enough. All of you come over this way. So he lays down 12 stones, which would have been for the 12 tribes of Israel. He throws on his wood. He puts the bull on there. And then he does something that's actually pretty wild. He says, I need you to go get 4 jars of water. And I want you to dump the water on the bull and on the wood. And so they go and do that. And he says, do it again. They do it again. Do it again. He does it 3 times, and it fills so much that it fills a trench around the altar with gallons of water, reminding you they are in a drought. They're in a drought. And he is wasting resources. He is dumping this water on this, which looks wasteful, and it looks like he's arrogant. And then he looks up to God. He says, prove that you are the God of Israel. And I am your servant, and I have done this at your command. And with all of these people, thousands of people of Israel there, all of a sudden, fire comes down from heaven, a lightning strikes, and it burns up everything. It says that it burned up the wood, it burned up the bull, the stones, and it even makes a little comment that says even the dust. I mean, it burnt up everything. All the water in the trench, gone. And all of a sudden, all the people begin to say, oh my God. This is the one true God. And then Elijah does something, and I don't know why necessarily. I know this was done in Israel's past to the prophets of God. Elijah says, I want you to seize the prophets of Baal, and he kills them. All 450 of them. And then he goes off and he tells Ahab, there's a rainstorm coming. And sure enough, it comes. And then Ahab goes back to Elena and Jezebel and tells her what has happened. And she says, surely as the day is long, I will kill Elijah today. And here's maybe the most important part of the story. And this is going to be my one main point. So don't miss it. Elijah runs. He's afraid for his life, even after this incredible miracle. And he flees and he goes a ways out and he's out in the wilderness. And then he gets down and he prays because he's scared. And he says, God, would you take my life? Like, I can't do this. Just kill me. And in today's culture, we would call that a mental health issue. That Elijah is asking to die. It looks suicidal. Like, it really does. Like, he is potentially in a depression. And here's why I bring that up. Elijah, this guy who just had this amazing miracle happen, this hero of the faith, is a human. And every single character you go through in this Heroes of the Faith study, every single one you're going to go through and you have, they're all humans. They're like you, and they're like me. And you're like, that's your main point, dude? Like, that's what you got? Like, I think most of the time we feel like they're up here and I'm down here, and the reality is we're all right here. These heroes of the faith are just humans. But here's the kicker. And this really is the main point. I'm kind of sidetracking a little bit. You want to know what a true hero of the faith is? Normal people who have stepped into their call of God. A true hero in the faith is just a normal person who steps into their call with God. That's what a hero of the faith is. That's all these stories are, is normal people, normal men and women who have just decided, I'm going to listen to God and act on it. That's all it is. And so I got 4 quick points. 4 quick points. I hope draws this out practically. I got a couple of good stories for you. The first one's this. First thing about calling is you are in process. And so is everyone else. Let me say it a little bit differently. You are a work in progress, and so is everyone else. The temptation is to think and to get, I think, a little less patient with people and not really graceful with people is to think they should really be here in their journey and their walk, but in reality, they're probably here. They should be, I think, down there, and they should be a little more mature, and they should handle this a lot differently, and they should do this, and they should do, I can't believe they did this. Can you believe they went out this weekend and did that? And the reality is they're probably here. You are in process. I am in process. Everybody is a work in progress. And you see that with Elijah. Elijah in 1 Kings 17, he's being asked to ask this widow for food, and there's not very much food around him. Why is he asking this widow? I think God is training him to learn how to ask. I think God is training him to learn how to be in front of people and to care for people. He's training him how to listen. God knows that Elijah is a work in progress, and then he eventually gets this big moment, this big call. But he was a work in progress. So be graceful with people, and be graceful with yourself. And remember that you are in process. And you have no idea what God's going to bring you to. There's a picture on my show, bring it out for you. A good friend of mine named Dan. Dan is an insurance guy, and this picture doesn't really give credit to who Dan is. Dan is rough around the edges. I'm going to tell you that. Every time I'm around Dan, I learn new 4-letter words. Not kidding you. Dan is one of those guys. About a few years ago, he decided he was going to give a day out of his week to help run our food pantry. We have a food pantry that runs every Wednesday. So he shows up at 8 a.m. and he leaves whenever they leave. And Dan gives his life to this food pantry, which is really cool. I mean, how many people do you know that could take a day out of their week to be with people who need something else? And he does it and loves it. And so just really about 6 months ago, he heard that every Monday we go to the juvenile detention center with kids who are in the jail. And Dan says, I want to do that with you. And so Dan started going to the juvenile detention center with us. And Dan has had a really rough last few years of family stuff. like really rough. And it's, just really tough things. And so Dan and his wife Trudy sold their house that was closer to the city of Cincinnati, and they moved out just a little bit. They're still within Cincinnati limits, just to kind of get away. So I went out to Dan's property. He donated a couch to Block, which is who I work for. And it's a house, and it's got like this side, like kind of guest house / just guest room. And he's giving us this couch, and he throws his arm around me. There's property out there, and he says, "Chris, take a good look at all this." All right, Dan. And take a good look at that guest house. And he goes, "I have no idea why God has given me this. I don't deserve it. I legitimately don't know why I have this. But I fully believe that God has asked me to fix this thing up so that people like you and other missionaries can come and just stay here for free. Just so you know, and so if you don't come stay here, you're not listening to God." He flat out told me that. And Dan, with a few other colorful words thrown in there. And Dan's one of those guys who said, if you'd known me 5 years ago, that we wouldn't have been having this conversation. You want to talk about a dude who is in process. He's a work in progress, and I use the word progress intentionally. And so I go to Dan a couple of days ago. I said, "Dan, I'm just letting you know, I'm going to this church. I'm going to talk about you." And he's like, "What?" And I'm like, I just want to let you know I see God in you." And he goes, "Man, that church is crazy." So he thinks, but I say that like genuinely. I see God in Dan, and he is a good friend of mine, and has legitimately changed me in the way that I see people. So you are in process, and so are others. So be graceful. Second thing is this: callings change and shift. Your callings change and shift. Elijah is moving around from place to place. He's with this widow. He's taking care of her. He's doing all that, and then later on, he's the person who brings down the fire of the Lord. They callings change and shift. So I want to show you a quick video, and then you get a description of something that changes and shifts.
Bill Gates. What's your favorite animal?
Dog.
What's your favorite food?
Hamburger.
What do you eat for breakfast?
Nothing.
What is your worst fear?
I don't want my brain to stop working.
Bill is a multi-processor. He'll be reading something else, but then processing at the same time. It's chaos. He thrives on complexity. He makes a framework in his mind, and then he starts slotting in the information.
If something doesn't line up, and he gets really frustrated, it's scary.
But when Bill stills himself, he can pull ideas together that other people can't see.
At Microsoft, I worked night and day, and that was how I made sure Microsoft stayed ahead. I could be so extreme.
You never understood the first thing about this.
Microsoft hit a new record high on Wall Street.
Rivals paint a dark picture.
He'll do whatever he can to capture more of the market.
Our mother wanted him to focus on community and family.
I gave my mom a hard time not following what she wanted.
You don't raise a family hyper-focused in your head.
Each one of us has to start out with developing his or her own definition of success.
I had the wrong way of looking at things. In life, you have to decide what's important in the world. I will look at energy, climate change, and disease eradication. It's important that we start deploying solutions unnaturally fast.
We are running out of time here.
He tends to look at problems from unusual angles.
There hasn't been innovation in nuclear energy for 25 years.
What are the odds of getting the job done?
If you want to make a dent in this, you better think in wholesale magnitudes.
He's at his best when the deck is stacked against him.
There's many challenges.
This is harder than I expected.
Ultimately, it's not what you get. It's what you become.
I'll preach. This documentary, it's on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, it's called Inside Bill's Brain. Highly, 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 highly recommend it. And here's why. Bill Gates runs Microsoft, one of the richest men in the world. 2008, he leaves it, and he begins this Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And Bill's one of those guys they begin to talk about. So he reads 250 books a year, 180 pages an hour, and retains 90% of it. Crazy. I mean, this guy's working on this level. We're all down here kind of thing. But here's what Bill Gates did. Leaves Microsoft and begins to read this textbook on the world's problems, and he finds out that diarrhea is killing 3,000 kids a day, that polio is still in high effect in third world countries, and so what he challenges all the world's billionaires. Give half your wealth to me, and we will tackle these problems. And he is eradicating polio and diarrhea across the world. Literally saving lives. And he says this one line in the documentary that's really fascinating. He says, I'm a tech guy. I'm just a tech guy. That's all I do, and that's all I know, and that's all I've ever done. And so I see problems that are tech problems that look like nails to me. And so with my big tech hammer, I just hit nails. This is a guy who said it was about money, it was about Microsoft, it was about building software, and all of a sudden he just slight shift. I'm going to use my gifting and my wiring to go here and change the world. Callings change and shift, but oftentimes it's around your gifting and how God has wired you. You are in process. He's developing you. He's working through you. He's working in you, but he's wanting to take that because somewhere down the road, he often will shift you. Just a slight 2-degree shift to make a bigger difference in the world. You are part of that. And that leads to my last point is this. Not only are you in process, not only can callings change and shift, but you are called. You are called. God is calling you. He says this, and Elijah says this in 1 Kings 18:37. It says, answer me, God. And so these people, and this is really important, will know that you are God and that you have brought them back to you. He is looking for all in, full throttle, jump in the pool, let's go after it type people who trust. That's what he's looking for. He is calling you to something. 2 quick stories and I'll get you out of here. One is this. I never, my whole life, and you guys, come here and you're like, oh, you're probably a lot more gifted than you think, but I've never been the smartest person in the room. Never will be, never have been. I'm not the most gifted person ever in the room. I'm just not. Even growing up in sports, I could play sports, I could do sports, I could be maybe a part of the team, but I was never going to be a star player. Like, that just wasn't who I was. And I've never been that in my life. And so I've kind of carried that with me, I've carried this with me that I'm just not quite good enough. Like, I'm okay, I'm just not quite good enough to be here. And, with working with Block, where I work at in Cincinnati, and as we've kind of gone through this journey, the idea is for my wife, Kelsey, and I to take this over at some point in time, and that's in the works, that's in the talking. I'm not telling you something that's just like a theoretical thing. And to be honest, I just feel overwhelmed, but not good enough to some degree. And I go and meet with a friend of mine, a pastor friend of mine, and he says, I'm telling him about my father-in-law who runs it, and he sometimes is the most gifted person in the room. He sometimes is the smartest person in the room, genuinely, I said. And he says, yeah, that actually might be true, but if God calls you, he's going to equip you. Don't worry about this other thing. You just need to worry about it. He calls you to this, he'll equip you. And that's been a kind of a game changer for me to say, I don't have to be the most gifted. I don't have to be the best in the room. If I'm called to it, I just got to do it, and he will equip me. That God calls, he qualifies the called. He doesn't call the qualified all the time. And that's one I have to keep remembering. Nothing special about Elijah, but God is bringing him literally what he needs when he needs it. But the last story I want to tell you is this. We have some family friends that live in Knoxville, Tennessee. And they've been family friends of my wife Kelsey's family for the last couple generations. So her grandparents were really good friends with this set of grandparents that live in Tennessee. And their names were Ma'am and Pat. So Ma'am and Pat, well, just sounds like a Southern, that just sounds like a Tennessee grandma and grandpa, doesn't it? Like Ma'am and Pat. So Ma'am and Pat, getting older in their 80s, mid-80s. And Ma'am, for as long as I've known her, and everybody tells me this about Ma'am, truly is a servant. In every sense of that word. Every time I've ever seen her, you see her, she's a little old petite lady who's hunched over. But every time you saw her, she was cooking dinner for somebody, cleaning up for somebody, encouraging somebody. I mean, sweet, gentle old lady, Ma'am. And I think that's who she was, who she is. And her daughter, Penny, had 3 boys. And the oldest one had some severe special needs. And so Ma'am and Pat moved in next door to Penny and Jody. And Ma'am was a stay-at-home wife. Just a stay-at-home wife, taking care of kids. And they moved in, and Ma'am helped take care of the kids in general, but in particular the oldest grandchild who had special needs. No glory in that. No recognition. Not going to find Ma'am in the newspaper. Ma'am's not going to be in front of any executives. Ma'am's not going to stand next to Marty Berman. And Ma'am lived her life like that. Just loved people. The calling God had given her, right go. Ma'am fell or something happened, and so they called the ambulance. Ma'am walks herself to the ambulance. In typical Ma'am fashion, she's thanking the paramedics. Hey, thank you for picking me up, And Ma'am went to the hospital and died. And essentially, I mean, there's medical stuff, but essentially her body just gave out. And but here's what I found in this. Ma'am was a called woman until she was called home. And you are meant to be a called person until you're called home. You are created and designed to be a called person until you are called home. Don't miss it. Don't be passive about it. That God has called you until you are called home. And may we not miss that in this world. May we not miss that in our checkbooks and how we invest our money in others and in the world. May we not miss that with our time. May you not miss that with your kids. Gosh, one of the best things I feel like I'm doing, and I'm not always good at this, but best things you can say to somebody, but in particular kids, is I cannot wait to see what God's going to do with you. I cannot wait. Because that just speaks so much life into them. But may we not miss the call in our life. You can be a hero, because a hero is just somebody, a normal person, who steps into the calling of God. The last scripture I'm going to throw at you is this. And this, after I get done with all my preparing for the sermon, and check this scripture out, this will blow your mind. James 5:17. Elijah. James is talking about Elijah. And do you know what he says? Elijah was a human being. Elijah was a human being, even as we are. He prayed earnestly that it would not rain, and it did not rain on the land for 3.5 years. That's just the little blip that James gives it. He was a human being just like you. Don't miss it. So this week, who's one person that you can talk to clarify your calling? Even if you're in the last quarter of your life, who's the one person that you can talk to clarify your calling? Where are your finances? Are they going where you feel called? What if you committed your actions in one day this week to God? Let's just see what He'd do. Just one day. Hey God, I'm giving you my actions today. What's that look like? And ask God to help shape your schedule. because He might make you less busy than what you are. Blessings on you guys. Thanks for letting me come. Truly, you are a called person. Now step into that, and have a great day. See you guys.